today. Now, the long-awaited evidence from the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, will happen today. He's at the COVID inquiry.
It's not. The rumour's not true that Bev Turner was waiting outside to attack him, but she thought about it.
It's around the corner from where we filmed GB News, and the crowd, I have to say, the crowd of press today was huge, bigger than any other day.
And he's going to be there for 2 days. So he's going to be quizzed, questioned about social distancing measures, the vaccine rollout, and, of course, all the criticism that's been aired about him in the inquiry so far. That's
right. Remember those leaked WhatsApp messages earlier from this year, the so-called lockdown files, as the Daily Telegraph called them? Just to recap, here are some of the findings.
Hancock ignored official advice to test all residents going into care homes.
That's right. He launched a rearguard action, apparently, to ensure that schools would not open widely.
He messaged George Osborne, the former Chancellor, when he was editing the Evening Standard, asking for a favour of positive coverage.
And now Matt Hancock has repeatedly criticised the leaks, referring to published messages as a partial, biased account to suit an anti-lockdown agenda. Which is a ridiculous thing to say.
So he's got some big questions to answer, but will the questions be asked?
No, they're not going to ask him any of the right questions. And actually, funnily enough, we've talked on this about the inquiry being focused too much on who said what to who and what does that tell us about the people. In Matt Hancock's case, I think a big question does sit over his character, actually, and to what extent his own personal wants and needs for a pandemic, as one of those WhatsApp messages said as well, that it would be good for his career. Yeah. And to what extent, and also, he was cheating on his missus. Like, do you know people who loved lockdown? People who were cheating on their wives, they loved lockdown because they could tell their wives, you're not allowed to leave the house, and I'm going to go and I'm going to be in the car park of the golf club with someone for half an hour. They didn't say that. But it played to certain issues, personal issues, I think, in his life. Yeah. They can't ask him that, obviously, but...
And, of course, he's standing down at the next election, of course, because he lost the Tory whip because he went into the jungle.
Character. In his case, I think there is quite a lot of questions to be asked about character. And we need to know... Why the fear was so exaggerated, why they ignored data like the Diamond Princess cruise ship. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in January 2020, there was this cruise ship which had about 2,666 passengers on it, I think it was. And they got COVID on that cruise ship, and it actually formed a brilliant Petri dish example of the infection fatality rate, and actually proved that for the vast majority of people, COVID was not the lethal death sentence. For the vast majority of people, it wasn't going to be that dangerous. All of that kind of thing ignored, and they went headlong, focused on locking down the country, making us stay at home. And I got a message from my mum this morning who reminded me. She got a phone call on the 30th of March from her GP to say, if you get COVID, do you want to sign a do not resuscitate order? And she was sitting at the kitchen table having a cup of tea and a cheese sandwich, and she said, and it was so upsetting.
Yeah, of course.
And that came from his department. Ring anybody, ring the old, ring anybody that's got a pre-existing medical condition, and ask these perfectly well-living people if they want to sign a do not resuscitate order. It's just a complete ripping up of hundreds of years of medical ethics. Disgusting.
Well, GB News presenter Pip Tomson is outside the inquiry. Pip, he's arrived, I presume.
Sorry, Andrew, I didn't hear your question. Could you just say that again?
Yeah, I say, has he arrived yet? Because there's a huge crowd of people waiting to see him.
Yeah, he got here, especially early, I think. He was here just after 8 o'clock. So, Bev, if you were heading past, you might well have missed him. And I know from what you said, Bev, you've got so many questions. I should try and slip a piece of paper, shouldn't I, to Baroness Hallett, who's chairing the inquiry. But, yeah, Matt Hancock is up in the next few minutes. Former Health Secretary. I think we last saw him, didn't we, on Celebrity SAS being interrogated. We'll see if this is as taxing for him over the next couple of days. What does seem to be a running theme through this inquiry so far is his overconfidence, if you like, and his optimism. And this is the man who led all those daily press briefings, who was telling us what to do about social distancing, updating us on the vaccine programme and the state of the NHS, and was then forced to resign in 2021 after breaking his own social distancing rules. Now, so far there have been a number of key witnesses giving their testimony, which has been quite damning of Mr. Hancock. It includes the former NHS Chief Executive Lord Stevens, who said that Matt Hancock thought he, rather than medical professionals or the public, should decide who should live and who should die. Unfortunately, this horrible dilemma, said Lord Stevens, never crystallised. Also very interesting was what the former Deputy Cabinet Secretary Helen McNamara said, who claimed that Matt Hancock had nuclear levels of overconfidence. And then she recalled, and you'll probably remember this, Andrew and Bev, she recalled this, what she said, jarring incident where she was talking to him about how difficult it must be to be Health Secretary during the pandemic. And Matt Hancock responded by miming playing cricket, saying, "They bowl at me, I knock them away." The most damning testimony so far has come from, as you might expect, Dominic Cummings, who was Boris Johnson's chief advisor. He has alleged that Matt Hancock lied his way through the pandemic and killed people, and dozens of people have seen it. But there has been some defence of Matt Hancock as well. Michael Gove, who gave evidence earlier in the week, he was Minister for the Cabinet Office at the time of the pandemic. He said, "I have a high opinion of Matt Hancock as a minister." Well, this part of the inquiry is looking at the decision making. It will, of course, be looking at the lack of PPE, the number of people who died in care homes, the claims that Matt Hancock made in May 2020 that he'd thrown a protective ring around care homes. Was that really true? Relatives I've been speaking to this morning say that was a figment of his imagination. I'll bring you the very latest here on GB News. The inquiry starts very shortly.
OK, thank you so much, Pip Tomson there. Yeah, well, I don't have any confidence that he'll be asked any of the right questions, but let's see what he has to say.
Yep.
I might be wrong.
And he's there for 2 days.
What time does he come out? What time do I finish here?